let's just start with the contract before we get to the statement that was made by Rich Paul with the announcement that he was going to opt into his contract. What did you make of LeBron opting into that final year of his deal? How did you interpret that to mean?
I think it always made the most sense. In my previous life at The Athletic, I reported that he was unlikely, almost certainly, to take a pay cut, and that there was no interest there. So I did not expect him to, he would have had to take a substantial pay cut of about $15 to $20 million to open up that non-taxpayer MLE before we had this recent development over the past 24 hours of Dorian Finney-Smith now likely leaving, which will open up the non-taxpayer MLE for the Lakers. But, to me, it was just the signal that LeBron wanted to secure his money and didn't want to test free agents. I mean, there was really nothing to test. It was only the Brooklyn Nets, but there could have been, I guess, a discussion about maybe a 1+1, but it seemed like it never got to that point. So I always anticipated this being the most likely outcome, and was not surprised when I saw that. But I was surprised by the ensuing statement that was with it.
All right, so let's unpack that. And I'm going to read the statement. This is from Rich Paul to ESPN at the time of revealing the decision by LeBron James. LeBron wants to compete for a championship. Okay, that's kind of boilerplate. We know that. He knows the Lakers are building for the future. He understands that, but he values a realistic chance of winning it all. We are very appreciative of the partnership that we've had for 8 years with Jeanie Buss and with Rob Pelinka, and consider the Lakers as a critical part of his career. We understand the difficulty in winning now while preparing for the future. We do want to evaluate what's best for LeBron at this stage in his life and career. He wants to make every season he has left count, and the Lakers understand that, are supportive, and want what's best for him. So your thoughts on the statement there from Rich Paul?
A lot to unpack. It almost read in past tense, right? 8 years with the Lakers, it's been a great partnership. I mean, you could take that a couple of different ways, but parts of it almost felt like they were talking about the past tense and having moved on, which obviously was not the case based on him opting in. It does feel like this is a little bit different than some of the other times, because we've done this song and dance before with LeBron and Clutch in terms of applying public pressure, and he's always had the optionality to potentially opt out or demand a trade. And that is been part of his strategy over the past 10 years or so in terms of using that leverage against his franchises to get them to do win now moves, trade first round picks, go for it, etc. However, this time it feels a little bit different just because the finish line is in sight, whether it's 1 year, 2 years, maybe 3 years tops, but I just don't see him playing 3 more years. I think it's 1 to 2 more years. You can see the finish line for him. So I think for him, it is kind of this urgency of, I want to win that 5th ring, which I think would vault him obviously into rarefied air in terms of just championships. That it's just a different level, 5 versus 4, regardless of how you feel about the GOAT debate and whatever. So I think for him, there's this urgency of I want the Lakers to build the best team possible this summer and go into next season as contenders. And they're looking at, we got Luka's extension. We got Austin Reeves, who's going to opt out next summer. We could have upwards of $80 million in cap space in 2026. And I think the Lakers are having some internal discussion about, is this almost like a gap year of we kind of go for it, but we'll sign someone with the non-taxpayer MLE, but we're not going to trade our first. We're not going to trade Dalton Connect. We're just going to run it back, have the flexibility. We have a bunch of expiring money. And then next summer in 2026, that's the summer that we build the next great Lakers team around Luka Doncic. And if you're LeBron, I understand why you would not like that messaging, why you would not like that strategy. And in that case, maybe you do have to explore other options and consider demanding a trade. So I think, talking to people yesterday, everyone assumes he's going to be back and that this is more just some of the public posturing that he has been known to do. So I would expect him to be a Laker next season. But if it is as simple as they sign Brook Lopez or they sign DeAndre Ayton and they don't make a trade, you have to wonder if he does consider asking out. And at that point, then that's a whole other discussion of like where makes sense, what's realistic, and what do the Lakers want? Because I don't think they're just going to want to take on a bunch of long-term salary.
He seems to want to have his cake and eat it too.
Yep.
Because if he wanted to explore his options, he could have done that. He could have opted out of his deal, scoured the landscape. I mean, he could have made this offseason one of the most interesting in history. If LeBron James was on the free agent market and not looking to get a max level deal over the long term and wasn't going to cost you anything more than a roster spot and some money, I mean, it would have been a free-for-all. It would have been like 2010 really all over again, just a different set of circumstances with LeBron James. He, as you pointed out, he doesn't like taking pay cuts. I don't blame him for that. Like, people can say he's made $1 billion and all the resources he has and the likelihood that he's going to make even more when his career's over. Doesn't matter. LeBron James, and I've said this before, and I think you'd agree, like, he's worth every nickel and then some to whatever NBA team he plays on. He drives ticket sales. He drives ratings, local and nationally. I mean, he is a cash cow. So if he doesn't want to take less, I don't blame him for that. But by opting in, he's limiting his own options here. And I think he's kind of banking on the Lakers. If it doesn't look like that the Lakers are going to be able to compete for a championship, be it before the start of the season or even during the season, that they're going to find an off-ramp for him, whether it's via trade or even just waiving him and letting him go out and do his thing and still collect the $50 million that they owe him for the rest of his contract. Are you reading it kind of the same way that I am?
Yeah, I'm skeptical of a buyout. I don't see the Lakers just eating that money. And again, Brooklyn's the only team with cap space. So I don't, like, unless he wants to go to Brooklyn, which would make zero sense, and have him be even further from that elusive fifth ring up to this point. Like, it just wouldn't really make sense. So he could sign the non-taxpayer MLE, but then he would have had to have opted out and tested for agency in that case. So I agree with you. He wants to get the full the money that he was owed with his player option, but he also wants to be on a contending team or in a contending situation, and that's just not the way that this Lakers situation is looking right now. If you look at, like, if they lose Dorian Finney-Smith, which all signs are pointing to him leaving and likely going to Houston, replacing him with a Brook Lopez or DeAndre Ayton, like, yes, that temporarily plugs your center hole, but now you have an even bigger hole on the wing. And I think they already had a pretty big hole on the wing, and that was with Dorian Finney-Smith. So it's almost like they're playing whack-a-mole with their roster right now in terms of the deficiencies. And I think replacing Dorian Finney-Smith with Brook Lopez or DeAndre Ayton is a net negative. I think they got worse. And because you could have potentially kept Dorian Finney-Smith and still signed one of those guys with the 5.7 taxpayer MLE. So I view it as actually losing a rotation spot, losing a spot on your cap sheet, and replacing that with a minimum player. So the Dorian Finney-Smith is worth much more than a minimum player. So I think that they're in this is not working out well for them right now. And you got LeBron applying pressure. Then I think the biggest thing of all is, like, put LeBron to the side for a second. It's what Luka wants. What is Luka like? Luka, I don't think, is content with a gap year or them just kind of being this like play-in team or low-tier playoff team. Luka wants to win a championship. He wants to get back to 2024, get back to the finals. So I think he's going to want them to put assets on the trade market and try to upgrade the roster. So they have to impress him over the next month or so before that August 2nd extension date. And right now, like, it's kind of off to a rocky start, I would say, to put it kindly.
Before we get to Luka, I do want to touch on him. Like, the trade market for LeBron, I don't think it really exists. And not to say the teams wouldn't want to have him, but you got to do some serious cap gymnastics to find a way to make it work with one of his preferred destinations. And I would imagine that, like, on my list, there's three. Dallas, so I know you've reported on some, and you've talked about them being in the mix. Absolutely, I get that. AD is there. Kyrie is there. That's a team that, even in the aftermath of the Doncic trade, they are equipped to compete for a championship right now. Cleveland, for obvious reasons, multiple reasons. You've got, him being, a Cleveland guy again. Saw him in the playoffs in Cleveland, just hanging out there with the wife, doing his thing at the arena. And of course, they were a 64-win team last year. Like, they're built to at least win the Eastern Conference. And I think then is New York, which is, looking to do something this offseason to put themselves on a little bit of a higher plane than they were last year. I don't know how a deal gets done with all three of those teams without, the Cavs are a second apron team. I mean, you could do it, but you've got to gut your roster to make it happen. And it's kind of the same thing with Dallas. I haven't really done the math yet with New York, but unless you're throwing Karl Towns into that mix, it doesn't make a lot of sense from their end. I don't know if it's not going to be a buyout, and it's not just going to be a straight hey, we're just going to waive you and move on, and thanks for all your work the last 7 years, and here's a $25 million or $30 million parting gift halfway through the season. But if it's not that, I don't know how a deal gets done here. I'm just struggling to come up with the solution that would satisfy LeBron going to another team without the Lakers. You mentioned it, their cap is clean in the summer of 2026. They've got flexibility there. They don't want to blow that up. They don't want to take on extra contracts that might have more years on it just to get LeBron to the team he prefers. I'm not sure I see a pathway to a trade making sense for LeBron.
It's difficult. And I would add in Golden State as a team remember going back to the 2024 deadline, they inquired about him, and there's been this weird him and Steph teaming up or whatever. And I think there's been a little bit of a flirtation there, we'll say. So those are my four teams that I think make sense. And, I think people have thrown out other smaller market teams, but I just don't see LeBron outside of Cleveland. I don't see him going to a small market team. I think if he leaves, it's going to be another big market team like a Golden State, a Dallas, or a New York. There are different variations. Like with New York, you could do Cat straight up for LeBron and Bronny. You could do some combination of
Bronny, we're doing the package deal there.
I think you got to do the package deal.
Okay. Do you think it's a package deal no matter what? Do you think if he gets traded, do you think it's
not necessarily? Because I think LA is going to be his home base moving forward, unless maybe he ends up buying the Vegas team down the road and then that becomes his home base. But I think for the time being, they like living in LA. They've built an infrastructure here. A lot of his business ventures are in LA. So I think it would probably be a situation where his family stays in LA and then they're commuting or doing long distance, whatever. So I could that in that case, it could make some sense for Bronny to stay, and that also kind of kills that, because if Bronny gets traded, of course, there's going to be the ensuing well, it's some of the chatter from last offseason is going to follow him into the new spot of, he has to be with LeBron, and just some of the discourse that I don't even want to get into, but that stuff is going to follow him. Whereas if LeBron gets traded and Bronny stays with the Lakers in LA, there's kind of a separation there, and he can form his own identity without being in his dad's shadow, just directly. So I think that could, I don't think it's a package deal necessarily, but I think it could make some sense that to keep them together. But you look at New York, you could do OG Anunoby, Mitchell Robinson, Deuce McBride. Dallas, there's actually some interesting options, Gafford, Washington, Clay, and Max Christie or Najee Marshall or Caleb Martin as that fourth guy. But Gafford in Washington, two starting front court guys with Luka on a finals team. Klay Thompson, Luka signed off on that last summer. And then you could get kind of a bench wing in there. Lakers only have 10 guys under contract right now, so they can take on multiple players in a potential trade. Golden State's the interesting one because you could just do Jimmy for LeBron straight up, and that keeps the Lakers competitive in terms of adding another all-star level player. But then, as you mentioned, the cap sheet situation, now all of a sudden you're committing to Luka, Jimmy, and Austin long term. I don't know if the Lakers want to do that. So I think it's hard to find a situation where the Lakers get assets back that they want that also doesn't hamper their cap sheet long term. And are there picks involved? There's just a lot of questions with this. So that's why I'm still skeptical that a trade happens. I think he runs it back, and if he leaves, it's probably next summer for the final year of his career.